Hello YouTube. So today I've got a really exciting video, something I promised you a while back. So today we're going to be doing a trigger tune, or polishing the trigger, as some refer to it. So stay tuned, let's get cracking. Okay, so what we're going to need to do this trigger polish, well, obviously we need our gun. We're going to need some Allen keys to take the gun apart, and then we're going to need some sandpaper. So I've just got various grits here, 360, this is 600 and 1200, and then I've just got a strop here as well. So this is all just from my knife sharpening kit, so nothing too fancy there. Alright, so I have done a previous video where I've shown how to take apart the gun, so I'm not going to do that in detail today, but yeah, let's get going. Okay, so I hope you took note of that. If you click your fingers, the gun comes apart, so that's how easy it is to strip it, but I'll also leave a link to that in the description below. So the parts that we want to be interested in, so if we look at this trigger, basically it is a two-stage trigger, not that we can, and it's adjustable, but the only thing that we're really adjusting is the take up in between the first stage and the second stage, and that we adjust with this little screw inside here. So all we're doing is we're adjusting this space in between the trigger here, and that can either increase or decrease the take up that you see there, that little bit of play. So that's the first stage of your trigger, and then your trigger gets made. So how this trigger works is your hammer sits inside here, we cock it against the hammer spring, and basically what's happening is this portion of your hammer over here, this portion that you see here, is going past the trigger, and the trigger is catching on this point over here. Alright, so what we want to do in order to polish or tune this trigger to make it work smoothly, we need to polish 2 points that make contact with each other. The first point is inside here, where the back of the sear of the trigger is sitting, and the second point that we want to polish is this point on the trigger itself that is holding that hammer in position to be released. Alright, so I'm going to show you now how to take this trigger apart. Very simple, nothing complicated. So all we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is just going to push this pin out here. Remember, you don't want to lose any of these parts, otherwise you're really going to struggle. So that's the first pin, and then you'll see this front portion of your trigger is actually loose there. Okay, and there you can see the adjustment screw that you have there. Alright, so that's how you can adjust your trigger. Okay, so we're going to leave that in place for now, make sure those pins don't fall out. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to take out this pin here at the back. So if you remove that pin, then you'll see your whole sear is loose. Alright, and there you see there's a small little spring. Make sure you don't lose that spring. Alright, I'm going to just take that out for now, put it there with those pins. And if you look inside the trigger itself, you'll see that there's actually a little point there. There you see it over there, that little spring sits in. Alright, so we're going to put this one side for now. Alright, so basically, just to illustrate what's happening when this gun gets cocked, so basically you're pulling back on the your loading pin, it pulls this hammer back past, and then it sits directly there behind the sear. So what we're going to do, we're going to polish those two surfaces that are touching each other, and that will allow us to have a much smoother trigger and a much lighter trigger. And the lighter your trigger, the better your accuracy can be as well. So let's do that then. So let's start off with this portion of the hammer. So all I've got here in my homemade knife sharpening kit is basically just a piece of MDF. Just gonna wrap the sandpaper around it. And all we're gonna do, just gently, we don't want to change any dimensions, just gently polish this up. Right, so there you can see we've basically removed that paint that's there. Then next step, I'm going to take a bit smoother sandpaper. So this is a 600 grit, and same thing, just going to rub it on there. All we're trying to do is just polish up that surface so that we can have a smoother action in our trigger. Right, there you can see nicely, it's really starting to take shape there. Let's move on to the last one. This is a 1200 grit sandpaper. Just want to try and get it a nice corner there. Okay, and again, just gonna lightly rub it. We don't want to change any dimensions. You only want to just get it nice and smooth. Right, so if you look now at that hammer, you can see very smooth there at that point. That's where the sear contacts it. Now for the last step, we're just going to do a bit of polishing. This is just a piece of leather with a bit of buffing compound on. All we're going to do, just rub it on that leather. Okay, simple as that. There you can see very nice shiny surface there, and that's going to help us to get a smoother trigger. Right, so now I'm going to follow that same process with the rest of this sear now. So if you look there, you can see it's not very smooth. It's not rough, but it's not very smooth. So we're just going to polish that up, and that's going to help us. Again, we want to make sure, if you look carefully, you can see there's actually a slight angle on the top of that. We don't want to change that angle. We just want to polish that surface nice and clean. Alright, so let's start off again. This one we're going to do as flat as possible, because obviously we don't want to change that angle. So all I'm going to do, just nice and smoothly find the angle. Alright, getting there. Let's go a little bit more. Okay, there you can see. Just clean it up a little bit. Now let's go to the next grit. So this is now 600 grit sandpaper. Just find that angle. Nice smooth action. Okay, can really start to see coming together here. Right, nice flat surface. Again, you'll see I'm actually just tipping it forward just to feel where that angle is. And then just a nice smooth stroke back. Okay, what you just need to be a little bit careful of is that you want to make sure you don't end up with the burr here on the top. So before we go over to the strop, I'm just going to just round that point a little bit. Alright, there we go. Simple as that. Now I'm sure there's no burr there, so everything is nice and smooth. And the last step is just going to be to run it on that strop. Okay, so there we see two surfaces that's going together, and they are now as smooth as silk. There we go, smooth as silk. Really going to make that trigger extra light, and it's going to really improve our accuracy as well. Alright, so now let's assemble this again. Very simple. First thing we want to do, we're going to put our spring back inside the sear there. Okay, you can see it. Just make sure that spring is seated in the right position there. Okay, then the next step, we'll put the first pin back. This is the longer of the two pins, so just put that back in there. And these pins really come out very easily, so you do not need to have any fancy tools or put in a lot of effort. Right, and then there you can see that's back in place. I'm going to put the last pin in. There we go. There we have our trigger back together. Okay, nice and smooth. Nothing too fancy there. Alright. So then, that's basically that. Now all we have to do, put this gun back together. I'm going to put it back together, and then we'll give it a dry fire, and let's see how it goes. So I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, so here you see it. There's our Artemis CP2 back together, and let's just give this trigger a test run. So obviously there's no CO2 in here, but you can just listen how smooth that trigger is. So there you have it. Really simple to polish or to tune your trigger, and you'll be surprised at the results you can get from this. It really just makes that trigger so much lighter, so there's so much less chance of you basically moving or pulling the trigger a bit skew, or your hold having an effect, or flinching or something like that. So just by tuning or polishing that trigger really makes it so much easier. And yeah, it's that simple. It really isn't complicated. You could probably take a little bit more time than I did, but not even necessary. You just want those two surfaces to be smooth, nicely polished up, and you're going to have a beautiful trigger afterwards. So go try it yourself, and as always, if you enjoy these videos, please remember to like and subscribe. So see you in the next one. Ciao.